horn players go back a ways in our family, even though I ended up with guitar. We try to sound like Miles Davis or Prez anyway. People talk about tenor ideas or piano ideas. There also are when cross different musics and styles all the time. Miles listening to Bill Evans, Evans listening to Debussy, Jelly Roll listening to light opera, and so on. Now, trumpet, if you had to choose one, is the horn. Everybody paid attention to it. The cornet next to trumpet is more reserved. Young Armstrong saved up for his cornet, turning later to trumpet. Then, of course, there's saxophone with Sidney Bechet, Bean, Prez, and a string up more through Coltrane. Yeah, you a spade, I'm an ope, let's blow. John Boda's Jack would propose to Louis Armstrong, and they did for many good sessions. Teagarden was in fact part Cherokee. They exchanged soulful vocals as well as playing. I'm myself a mix too, dark to pass, so it's not black enough for some of my black friends. I played a gig with a guy who had a chair next to what had been Big Spiderbecks in the latter days, Paul Whiteman's band, and they were the same old charts. He said that when the cornet solo and one tune approached, he could pencil in that margin, "Wake up, Bix!" Bix was a dedicated drunk. And of course they put up with him because he played like an angel. He loved the ambiguity of whole tones, and he'd run a run or chord. I'm sure Monk knew about it. Which was happening in jazz in 1959. Miles had kind of blew out, of course, but Ornette's second free album, The Shape of Jazz to Come, appeared then too. Mangus had that slew of great bands, and like Pisacanthropus erectus and Mingus, and we was always watching for what Miles, especially, would do next. He was such a disciplined cat, telling Keith Jarrett in that raspy voice that he didn't play ballads anymore because he loved ballads so much. Gil was only 14 then. Looking to dry out, escape the grind of the city. Him an orphan, but potentially a fine guitarist. Anyway, I took a shine to him like a son, and I told his caretaker, the widow Dorcas, that I wanted to teach him. He could tell that I missed my wife, daughter, Evie, more like a voice. Their absence was always there. Even if I joked that I'd come back to the fall because I was as far away from New York as I could be without getting too close to L.A. In fact, I was hoping to locate Elizabeth and Evie because I heard they was out here somewhere. I taught him mostly arrangements of ballads. How you can keep a finger on a string, change other ones, making the chords all liquid and more like a voice. And not the top or bottom, but the inner, subtle voices, which are sad, snide, hopeful. I didn't talk much about improvising, except to say, you should be able to sing whenever you're playing. He got to blowing records and playing in little sessions, real smart, but focused. I'd be laying this precious stuff on him, the things I'd known for, and he'd appear not to be listening. Well, he probably was. Finally, I said I taught him all I could. And I told him to play out as much as possible and, learn on the job. Well, he picked it up quickly and can get along with people, which is a big part of it. I had another student in Pueblo who was even better than McGill, but he had lots of problems and he died young. He told me his trust was damaged when black players shut him out of some situations, And he reminded himself that he was a white guy, Irish and Welsh, I think, playing black music, and the repercussions of history were making for some powerful backbeats. Into my hometown, I opened a music store and gigged with a quartet out of Denver. I recorded once in a while. Kept claiming I was hanging it up, but I could always get it all back if I practiced for a week. I was saying that for years, and slowly, pretty hollow. All things do. Sitting around the store, I taught myself classical technique. I'd always been a pick man, instead of the right-hand fingers, and I played all the big pieces, the Concerto di Aranja, box transcriptions. But I'd just play for people in the shop, including McGill, who would come home from college once or twice a year to see his friends and cousins. Every time Tori showed, he talked about some new music he was learning to play at Evergreen, which was just launching its world music program. They had teachers from South India, from the Shona of Zimbabwe, from Central Java. He was starting to mix academic talk with his jazz slang. When he was in town, he'd either visit me at the store or call up at home. In my house, I'd make him a Manhattan, and we'd sit in a little bar with the rifles in the cabinet and snapshots of me in the outhouse in Maine and standing on the boat next to my deep-sea catch. Yeah, I framed a poster with me on the bill and Count Basie and Sarah Bond. I remember waiting to go on once and standing back at the risers and hearing a foot tap during the number. Then I realized it was the entire Basie band, sounding like one foot. We have a tintype from the 1870s. My grandfather, F.E. Suso Stewart, in the Sabetha Cornet Crank Band. Sabbath is in Kansas, and crank means lively. They don't have uniforms like those from the Civil War. He'd stand in the back with his cornet, mustachioed, dark enough to be black, or Welsh, or Cherokees. Lord knows what the music was like, but McGill said some of those old bands sounded like the horn group that played for kings on the west coast of Africa. Buzz Lippin, Wood, or Ivory. He interlocked, and when he pointed it out, I could tell where their Dixie front line of trumpets, clarinets, and trombones came from. Like McGill brought a thumb piano from Zimbabwe home after a year at Evergreen and taught me some tunes on it. It's called a Mabira, a favorite of the Shona people. The tines, the metal keys that are hammered out of umbrella staves or motorcycle spokes are fixed in a soundboard, inside a big gourd, and your right forefinger working up with simple question and answer patterns to all kinds of variations. each song in its own groove. They're shown to listen to Mbira by participating. They sing a simple bass part when you rip on top, you get lulled by it, and even as you fish up energy from a mysterious place, singing about your girlfriend, nicknamed Mercy, or the one about the guy who loses his wife and goes into the forest all he can find to eat is worms. He said they had a teacher at Evergreen who was a real griot, a history singer from Gambia. In my house, Miguel tried one of my cigars once and seemed to enjoy it. On the return trips, he would still ask questions, sometimes coax me to play or ask for a guitar to show me something he'd come up with. He never stopped wanting to please me, and I was proud of him as a student. With money from Evergreen, he did a film documentary on me that was pretty good. With us at home, just talking and playing. Yeah, I moved out of the limelight when I was still a name in the jazz world, especially for my 1954 album with Stan Getz, Moonlight in Vermont. Famous luthiers would give me guitars, including the very fine arch-top maker Benedetto. Now, a couple of times I loaned the Benedetto to McGill, who didn't like to fly with his instruments until I chanced to see what they went for on my D'Angelicos. Still, John D'Angelico was the Stradivarius for jazz guitars. I lost my best one in a fire in the New York apartment. The D'Angelico I brought to Colorado was nearly as good. And that's the actually Gibson Company sent experts from Kalamazoo out to measure so they could build a Papa Sue signature guitar that I would endorse. They tried, but they never satisfied me. In fact, they only got it right once. But the steadiest spread at the time, even now, had been the royalties for my tune, Walk Don't Run, as performed by the Ventures. They heard Chet Atkins' version of it, not mine. The first Walk Don't Run check was waiting for me in my mailbox after I got out from under the complete missed bones. But more on that later. Tori had to discover it for himself. Even though I'd warned him, I did warn him about the miserableness of playing jazz professionally. The endless one-nighters, the dubious pay, the mafioso record companies, people talking over your solo. Jeez, so on. Started to say I hated practicing, even though I put uncounted hours into shedding. But I encourage local players, and visit the struggling clubs in the fall from time to time. The music biz. As the hillbilly musicians say, there's no money above the 5th fret. And that's the truth.